Welcome to Doodles episode 22. I'm your host, Sapna Malhotra. It's been 3 months since I last shared a conversation with you, and the reason is that I was on this amazing journey. I really want to talk about it with you, and after that, I will bring the wonderful guest that I have today. So, some of you might remember that I'm an educational change maker. I have my own company called Thoughts on Wings, and I conduct these sessions for teachers wherein I encourage them to rediscover their creative self and incorporate uh, theater, incorporate gamification, storytelling into everyday teaching. So, as part of that, I conducted 17 sessions for 400 teachers of Isha Vidhya Schools. Now, that by itself was amazing for me. But the biggest challenge when we wanted to start on this journey itself was that most of these schools are in the rural areas. So the teachers did not have a laptop or a tablet. So a big shout out to Mr. Dave Virlapatti. He's the CEO of S2 Tech and he's in the US. He's a philanthropist, he's a change maker. So he, within a span of 8 to 10 days, made it possible for each and every one of those 400 teachers to get a brand new tablet in their hand. So thank you so much, Mr. Dave, for doing that and for making it possible for all those 400 teachers and me to walk this path. So once we had those, all the teachers had those tablets in their hand, we were off. And then opened the box of excitement for me. When I conducted these sessions, the teachers were so energized, so excited, so positive, and they were like sponges. They wanted to absorb whatever I was giving them, and it was amazing to see that excitement. They wanted to take it back to their children. Ma'am, it's going to change their lives. That's what they would say, and they would want me to continue giving and sharing with them the techniques that I wanted to bring to them. So today I feel really privileged to welcome the guest. She is the energy, the positivity, and the excitement behind those teachers. She has been with Isha Foundation for the past 14 years, and she is the academic head for Isha Vidhya Schools. Please welcome Ma Vidyadevi. Welcome to Doodles, Ma.
Thank you. It's wonderful to join you.
Oh, amazing. I'm so happy and really feeling so elated to have you here today to have a conversation on the various aspects of education.
Me too. It's really exciting to be a part of your podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ma. But before we jump into our conversation, I would like you to tell us a little bit about your journey, how you began this path, what was your inspiration and where you are today.
Sure. So I'm from the US and I grew up there. And when I was in high school, I got involved with some volunteering. It was a part of my high school that we had to do volunteering. So then when I was in university, I also was interested in doing some volunteer work. So during the summers, I would, instead of, in the US, it's common for people to work. Students usually work in the summer. So instead of getting a job, I would do some different volunteer projects. And then after college, I thought, okay, before I start my profession, let me spend a year or two. And I wanted to do something abroad. I had also studied abroad when I was in college. So I got an opportunity to go to Nepal, where I was teaching for 2 years in a village school in rural Nepal. So that was an incredible experience. It was my first time coming to this part of the world, though I had traveled many times to Europe and South America. And after leaving Nepal, I also visited India and got interested in yoga and meditation. So when I came back to the US, I was looking at what to do for higher studies because I had always taken for granted that I would do some higher studies as everyone in my family had. And at that time, I also did an Isha yoga program that was in the US. So that was a turning point in my life. It was an incredible experience. It was the inner engineering class and Sadhguru was there as the teacher. And two things that aside from the spiritual aspect, which jumped out, one is that he spoke about Isha Vidya in the class itself. And having been in Nepal, of course, it piqued my interest. Oh, they also have a, rural education project. And I was wondering how they did it and, how it happened. They had just started it. So that was in 2007 when I did the class. And so I asked a question about Isha Vidya. Another thing which really struck me in the program was somebody asked about higher education. And Sadhguru answered something, I don't remember the exact words, about how with the current education system, sometimes the more we get educated, the less intelligent we become. It actually stifles us, you know?
Correct.
So instead of just going for more and more education, instead of that actually getting involved in things and doing things, we can learn so much.
Yeah.
So that was kind of something that stuck in my mind, because right then I was looking, you know, what do I want to do? Should I go to medical school or law school or, you know, something like this? So after this program, I did another program in the US, and then I decided to come to India and visit Isha Yoga Center here in Coimbatore. So I came here the same year in the fall, 2007. And it so happened that within about a week of coming here, I met somebody who was volunteering in Isha Vidhya. And when I told her about what I had been doing, she said, oh, you have to join Isha Vidhya, you have to join the project. So I thought, okay, let me see. So I spoke to the project director and I said, I'm interested in this and I've been doing something similar. And he said, okay, but you have to commit to be here for 2 years. And I thought, oh my gosh, you know, already I've been away for 2 years from the US and my family. Yeah. And I only plan to come for a short time. Yeah. But then I decided, you know, let me go ahead and do it, because Sadhguru and the ashram, I guess, is really what made it, you know, made me want to stay. But that 2-year commitment kind of stuck, you know, made me, okay, I'll stay for 2 years. Of course, by the end of 2 years, I had decided that I wanted to be here for my life. So that was back in 2007, and I've been here till now with Isha Vidhya. But definitely the inspiration is Sadhguru and how he's impacted my life, and also how I've seen him impact so many other people's lives.
Wow. I'm just so enamored with your entire story, Ma, and so inspiring, because like when you started on this path, you were so young, and you know, you're still figuring out what you want, and then to find a calling like that, and you've been with it for 14 years. It's so huge. It's such an inspiration by itself. So
yeah, it's definitely nothing that I would have predicted in my life. You know, I hadn't planned to go into education. But it's been an incredible journey. It's definitely been an ongoing learning experience for me. I can say for sure that I've learned so much on this journey, and I've been blessed with wonderful people. You know, aside from the inspiration from Sadhguru, there's so many people that I am here volunteering with or working with who are so passionate and, you know, dedicated to what they're doing, that it's been constantly an inspiration to have these people around.
Absolutely. And I think that's an inspiration for all of us who are listening to it, because all you need to do is, I think, like we say, look within, right? And that when that opportunity presented itself to you and you just thought to yourself, do I really want to walk this path? And then you got yourself, you know, heard that calling, and you've been walking still. So amazing. And thank you for sharing that with us. So going forward from there, Ma, like when you're talking about Isha Vidhya Schools and working with rural schools, of course, it's a totally different experience and a learning every day, I think, because when I conducted these sessions with your teachers also, it was a first for me, because I had never conducted a session for teachers in the rural areas. And I learned in every one of those 17 sessions. So I wanted to ask you, like, what is the philosophy and what is the ideology behind your schools when you come to rural schools, you know?
So Isha actually has 3 different types of school systems. So within the ashram, they have 2 schools. One is called Isha Home School, which is a very, you know, top level school. Children come from all over India and the world. It's a residential school. And it follows a more, you know, like a standard degree system where the children, after this, they can go anywhere in the world for any college or university. They also have another school called Samskriti, which is a Gurukulam style. So that's totally different. It's kind of going back to the traditional Indian approach. And the children there really specialize in not necessarily the academic subjects, but more the traditional arts, like, you know, traditional dance, traditional music, traditional martial arts, and medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, Siddha medicine, these type, yoga, of course. Sadhguru says these children are for the universe, not for the university. Wow. So these 2 schools are in the ashram. And Isha Vidhya is, again, a separate system, which is outside of the ashram. And Isha Vidhya is for the rural children. So our main objective is, 1, For our students, we want to ensure that they have a chance to go for higher education and get gainful employment. Many of them are first generation learners in their own family. So it's a big deal for them to come to a school, an English medium school, and get an education like this. So definitely employment is a main focus for them. Of course, that's not the case, for the schools in the ashram where the children already come from families who are financially settled, then that focus is something else. But our students are coming from families where they're still struggling to get food. Basic necessities, they may still struggle. 60% of our children are on scholarship, and that is after careful evaluation. So we, after they apply, we visit their home, we visit the neighbors, we see what are the assets, we make sure that they need the scholarship, and then only we give. Yeah. So these are children who really come from a very, they come from a background which is quite different from probably most of the people watching the podcast, certainly different from my background. And for them, getting a job is really important for them and their family. And in order to do that, we really prioritize English fluency, computer skills. And, these are two things which are really important to get employed. But aside from that, we also want them to be balanced and joyful. Yeah. So how do we combine these? How do we approach it in a holistic way? It's an ongoing journey for us. But ultimately, we want to create, make it possible for them to reach their full potentials. And there's different ways that may happen for different students, of course. Yeah. But that's the important thing. It's not just about getting a job. It's not just about learning English or getting good marks on the test. Yeah. It's about the development of the individual, making sure that they're in an environment where their possibilities are given a chance to blossom. And that when they step out of the school, wherever they go, they will know how to adapt to that situation. They've been given enough opportunities to think and to be creative and to, analyze situations that when they go to a new place, they have the capability to adapt. So these are kind of, roughly speaking, our objectives. And one other main thing is we want it to be scalable. So we want a model which can actually scale up substantially. Model which works in rural India, given the limitations, the challenges. Right. So each environment has their own challenges. It's not that any place is without challenge, but definitely rural India, the challenges are unique. When we look online, so much education material is there, but most of it we can't immediately use. Yeah. So how do we make a model which works with these teachers, with this environment, with the students from this background? And then beyond Isha Vidhya, how do we help facilitate other schools also employing the same techniques? Correct. So in addition to our own schools, we have 10 schools. We also work with government schools. So we do training, we give some content to them, and we see how we can also support them to enhance the quality of education for their students.
Absolutely. And so rightly said, Ma, that it's not only about the academics. And when I conducted these sessions with your teachers, I got the feeling that there was a lot of hands-on work being done. Like children were educated in a very experiential way, because I personally myself believe that in a lot, because I think anything that you learn by doing is something that remains with you forever. Something like, as mundane as tying a shoelace, which we learned when we were like 4, and we still remember, but we don't remember when the French Revolution happened or something. So I think it's pretty clear why we need to create our schools and our classrooms as pods for experiential learning for children. And I think when we talk about your schools, or any schools for that matter, it doesn't have to be a rural school. It just needs to be, where children have to learn with experience. And more, I feel that when you're talking, it's all about these children who are first generation learners, like you say. For those children to get education, it is impacting the society in such a big way, because one child educated in that family creates an entire different universe for that family. So that's, I think, a very big impact on the society. What do you think? I mean, you would have experienced it firsthand, when things happen like that.
Yeah, definitely. It has a ripple effect.
Correct.
So if you educate one child, and it's not just the academics, but the way that we interact with the children, the way the teachers are interacting with the child, it creates a different feeling. One thing, when we have new children join our school, when they come from other schools, one of their first comments will be, oh, the teachers, they don't beat us, they don't shout at us, they treat us in a different way. We've had, because we're not so exam focused, of course, we want our children to pass the exams, and they do phenomenal. They pass and they do well, but that's not our main focus. So we have had cases in higher classes, like 11, 12, where parents will take the child out and put them in a school which is solely focused on exam prep. Especially for something like medical school, there are schools which are exclusively just doing exam prep. So we've had students like this where the parents pull the child out and put them in that school. And then after a year, they bring them back, or after a month, they bring them back. Because either the child does not accept it. No, I have to go back to Isha Vidhya. Or the parent sometimes realizes, they see what's happening with their child, or in a few very tragic cases, we've seen, somebody else that family knows something very severe will happen to the child, because of so much pressure. That other child's parents will be pressuring them so much for exams, something like this. They may commit even suicide, something. Then the parents realize, then they realize, okay, what is different about Isha Vidya is very, very important, and they put the child back. Right. But we don't have students who themselves want to leave for exam prep. So the child has their head on straight, but the parents, and it's not all the parents, we have both extremes. We have some parents who don't care about education. Then we have to push them, okay, why is education important? Then we have other parents who are like so fixed on, test marks and these things. So we have to work with the parents. We have to do a lot of orientation for them also. For the children, it's a little simpler. Yeah. They have a very open mind, and they pick up things in a different way. Okay. So we've seen this. We've had children come who had misbehavior problems at their previous school. Then when they come, the parent shares with us, my child has started to behave so much better. Right. Because of what's happening, because of the way the teachers are handling them. The entire behavior has changed. The way that they're behaving at home has changed. Absolutely. So this is how we know something is happening.
No, and I think what you say, Ma, is so right, because it's the environment around the child that generates that kind of a behavior. And if the child is in a nurturing, in a caring, in a loving environment where the child feels secure, I think that's again a very, very big point there. Because when the child feels secure, I think then the child is able to, delve within and try to understand what I want to do and what I strongly feel about, versus a child who's been put in, okay, if you don't get this, then you won't get that. And you don't do this, then you won't get that. That kind of a learning versus the kind of learning where the child is given the freedom to think, to explore, and to experiment, and then figure out. I think there is it's a very clear-cut design for success here, where the children can explore and figure out what they want to do.
And a lot of it begins with the teachers, right?
Right. So absolutely.
Before the teacher can create this environment, we have to create that environment for the teachers, which is why, for example, something like your training, is a great experience for the teachers. And we also do a lot of training with them, because our teachers mostly they went through a very conventional education, which was completely memorization. They weren't allowed to ask questions. They weren't allowed to be creative. Really, they weren't allowed to think. It was all very stifling.
Yeah.
So now when we want them to start, teaching in a different way, it requires a lot of reorientation.
Absolutely.
And so that's also a beautiful experience. And that's one of, aside from the successes we see with students, we see a lot of change within the teachers. When they come for trainings, we've had them share, how it's a different experience. They've never had an experience like this in their life. We've had some teachers with tears in their eyes. Okay, I don't want to go back home. So usually now we're doing all online training, but previously we would have them come stay 3-4 days at the school. They would stay overnight. The first day, some will cry because they've never been away from home.
Yes.
You know, they've never left their city. They're coming to a new place. But on the last day, they'll cry because they don't want to go home. They've made so many friends. They built so many connections. Absolutely. And this is really important, you know. So for the teachers also, many of them have shared that the school is like a second home. You know, the support they get from their principal, their vice principal, it makes them feel like this is a second home, which then enables them to create that same environment for the children. So having this type of training, and of course they all loved your training, so that was nice.
I loved interacting with them. And when we're talking about the trainings, Ma, so you remember when we started our discussion for the training, I said we would probably do a 1.5 hour session. And from the first workshop itself, we ended up doing a 3 hour session. And that only happened because the teachers were so ready to absorb. They were like, no, Sapna Akka, let's do this also. And they were so excited to take what, I was sharing with them. And I learned so much because that excitement and that energy that they brought, it was all because the desire to take it back to the children. You know, it was so crystal that they wanted to make a difference in their classrooms, and which is so necessary as an educator. So that this leads me to bring you the next question. And I wanted to ask you, how do you inculcate that kind of a service mindset in your teachers? Because I could see it so clearly in the teachers when I was interacting with them. And I think whether they are in a rural or an urban school, it doesn't matter. I think that service mindset as an educator is so necessary.
So I think that there's kind of two main reasons for this. So on the one hand, definitely it starts with Sadhguru. You know, everything that Isha Vidhya is from his vision. And everything that he's doing is like not for his well-being. It's an outpouring, you know, of his desire for the humanity to be the best it can be. So our whole management is all volunteer, fully volunteer based. I'm a full-time volunteer. All of our management is. We have hundreds of volunteers around the world who support us. And like I said, 60% of children are on scholarship. All the land is donated. All the school buildings are donated. You mentioned Dayana, for example. He suddenly, here, 400 tablets, like this, you know, without a hesitation. So we have incredible people who are pouring in generosity, their time, their money, their experience. And this creates a different environment, you know, though our teachers are staff, but they have to earn money for their families and this and all. But they see so many people who are doing this out of dedication simply, that also, you know, the same thing happens for them. Most of our team, for example, we have an academic team who does all the like in-house training we do, and we do content adaptation. We see what material is available, how we can adapt it to work in the situation. We visit the schools and we, you know, help the teachers in site. Almost everybody in our academic team, either they're a volunteer or if they're staff, they're getting paid much, much less than they could if they got another job. They're here because they care about it. You know, many of them have an engineering degree or a computer degree. They could get paid 2 or 3 times more, but they're not interested in money. Yes, they need some money for their family. Definitely. But the reason that they're here is because they care about the cause. Same thing, many of our principals, probably all of our principals could get paid much more if they went to another school because they're so qualified, they have so much training, but they're here because they care. You know, and they see the children, they see what the home situation is like, you know, the challenges, so many challenges, you know, we don't see it from afar, but when you get to know the children, some of their home lives are so, you know, unbelievably challenging. I'm sure. If they don't have a father, or sometimes they don't have a father or mother, you know, so many things they go through. And for these children, the school is their anchor. You know, and the impact that the teachers and the principal have is really profound. So on the one hand, I think that is all, you know, from Sadhguru's grace that is happening. At the same time, I have to say that our teachers themselves come with such openness. I think being in rural India, they don't have the cynicism or the same attitude that you might have in an urban India, definitely in the US. I'm not saying everyone,
Yeah.
but they themselves haven't had so much exposure. So when you start giving them a little bit more exposure, they're like so eager and so open.
Yes.
This openness we see with our teachers and with our students. I don't know if we would find this if we went to an urban area or if we went to another country, but definitely our teachers are like so sincere. It's really amazing. So I'm not at all surprised, if the training went double, not a surprise. And I think I remember initially you and Day were asking, okay, can we send all the teachers hour and a half? Or like, of course, if it's worthwhile, they'll definitely go. They won't hesitate.
Yes, and I myself thought that because for like online training sessions and 1.5 hour, they'll be happy till then because it won't be productive after that. But the 3 hours just went non-stop without a break, and like you said, some of the teachers were at other times would be so emotional. I got so emotional, ma, because it just felt like I had expanded my family, because each one, we were so personally involved with that workshop. We were learning techniques to teach children, but the experiences that we shared throughout that journey, I think, just created a bond for, that would never be erased, kind of a thing. And when we're talking about the service mindset, like I personally feel that, definitely doctors, they have a responsibility because it's a life in their hand, just like a soldier or any policeman or a fireman, I think. And as an educator, we also have that kind of a responsibility, because we can shape a life, to give that child a life where the child feels secure, the child feels happy. And I think our schools really need to be those kind of happy pods where we can give them that environment, for them to grow and learn with joy. And I think that I felt a lot when I was talking to your teachers also, that on a daily basis there's so much of involvement of the teachers with the children, and on a personal level, so that they get that understanding where the child is coming from and what kind of needs that child has. So I think supporting the children in that way is like so wonderful to see happening. So which also takes me to another question, Ma, that to reach that kind of an environment, I think it is so important to address the mental well-being and the physical well-being of children and the teachers. So are there any specific practices that you have in your schools that address that?
So we have, of course, a lot of input from Isha Yoga Center. So for our teachers, we do a few different yoga programs with them, and we actually give them some time in school also to do yoga. We feel that that's, their mental health and their mental well-being is really important. We had it, like, for example, during COVID times, one of our principals had shared, initially she was really struggling because she was feeling kind of isolated, and some things in the family were happening. And then she started doing the Isha yoga every day. Just a simple practice, I think 10-15 minute practice she started doing. And it made a very profound difference for her. And she is, she's been with the school for a long time. She's so dedicated. When she saw this change within herself, immediately she thought, okay, I need to make sure all my teachers are also doing this. So she set up a group with all the teachers, and made sure that they are also doing, and they would share their experience, of how it was helping them. So she reached out to all of them, and it made quite a difference. We then, a little bit after this, we set up so we could do online yoga for the students. Right. Initially we didn't think of these things because we never would have thought, online yoga, never would have, something we've never considered, but we started doing that. So when the children are at school, also, they have time every day from around 3rd, 4th standard, we teach them a yoga practice, which is a children's yoga, which they have time in school to do. When they're around 11th, 12th standard, we also do the inner engineering class, which is for adults. Then they can do that practice in school. So this is one, main thing, which is very structured and well thought out. We do a lot of other things, kind of incidentally and see. So we have some content from a few different places, which is kind of fostering discussion about emotions, reflection on social interactions. We do a little bit of training, kind of informal training with our teachers on how to give basic counseling. If we see that students need additional counseling, then we try to connect them with outside resources. We have a few volunteers also who sometimes come and help. So for example, during the COVID time, again, some of the students were really struggling, either from isolation or, having the phone around all the time and what they're getting exposure to. So we had an expert come in, she did some counseling sessions with them. So in that way, we're very lucky because we have a lot of resources, probably much more than many schools because of the Isha network. If we see that we have a need for something, we have a way to reach out and to get some, some additional support where we may not have it in a team. One thing which I have to share is that when we have many visitors come to our schools, the most consistent feedback which they always give is how joyful the children are. How bright their eyes are. So anyways, that's how all children should be, actually. All children should be like that.
Yeah.
It's not that we're doing something amazing. What we're doing is we're not stifling that joy. We're not curtailing it. Because unfortunately, what happens in so many schools is that it's very repressive, it's very limiting. So that natural, spontaneous joy that a child feels actually gets reduced, so that when you see them a little older, they become very dull.
Yeah.
So it's not that we're doing something to bring out the joy. We're just making sure that we don't, suppress it, that we give it a space to express itself and, for that creativity and that expression to come. So this is definitely, it's also an ongoing process. I think now, with them having been home for a year and a half, we also have to reevaluate, okay, what additional support do we need to give, now as they come back, if we're facing a whole new set of challenges like everyone else.
Yeah.
So this, again, we have to see, like I said, we have an academic team. So we try to see, okay, what are other schools doing? What are professionals saying? How can we make these things work in our schools? But definitely it's something that we prioritize.
Definitely.
It's very important that it's not just the academics, but the overall well-being of the child.
Absolutely. And I think two things that I really want to bring out here, Ma. One is, of course, the global network that you talked about. And I think that's just, 3 months back when I had a conversation with a principal of a school here in Bangalore, and the conversation was all about sharing knowledge. And I feel that, there should be a network like that for all the schools to share with each other. Because why keep that knowledge just for yourself? At the end of the day, we are going to teach children, and children, wherever they are in, wherever they are in the world, can be taught by any one of us, and we can share our knowledge with each other. And like you said, you have such a wonderful support because all your volunteers from across the world help you give that help, whatever is needed. So that's one big message for, I think, educators everywhere, to understand that once we share knowledge, we also get so much from the other person, because when you give, the other person is also so happy to share what they have. So it would be wonderful to have a world like that, where educators across could just share their teachings with everybody, and children could benefit on a bigger scale. And I think the second thing that you brought out was so wonderful, that the children are in an environment where they are happy. Because I think it's not just about rural schools. I think that's, children are powerhouses of energy, right? So they need that let out where they can express their joy, they can laugh, they can jump. And every time just putting them in the classroom and saying don't do this and don't do that, of course, brings down the excitement to learn also. And if we let them have a little bit of freedom, I think that excites them to learn. So I think that's again a very big message, Mav, what you said. So talking about children, I feel that it must have been a big challenge in the rural areas for you to ask the parents to send the girl child for education. Did you have to really work hard on that front?
So that is a little bit dependent upon the area. In most of our schools, it was not a issue. There's a few locations where initially it was a little tough. So a few of the locations, I'm not now, I'm saying like 15 years ago when we first started, when we were first enrolling children, we had to convince a few parents of why they should send their daughter. That's specific to certain localities. Now it's not such an issue. I think one thing is word of mouth, especially with the scholarship system. See, one thing also, they don't have to pay. Paying for their child, for their daughter to get education may be a slightly bigger hurdle. So having scholarship is there. The other thing is, seeing the other families, and to a large extent, that's not such an issue now. Like I mentioned, we worked in government schools. So one very interesting sharing from one of the headmasters of one of the government schools we supported. At that time, we were doing a remedial program. So we were taking the children from class 5, 6, 7, 8, who were behind, who were behind their peers. And we had a separate class with them where we would help them kind of go through the basics and then mainstream them. So in one location, the headmaster shared that because of this, the less girls were dropping out of school. They were staying in school, and so they were not having as many child marriages. He said in that area, the number of child marriages had come down because the girls were staying in school a little longer as a result of this extra support. It's not such an issue in most of our schools, like I said. One thing that we are looking at though for girls is how to ensure that they continue higher studies and also go into a range of fields. So we are starting a scholarship for a girl who will go into a STEM area. This is from one of our donors. He specifically wanted to sponsor this for a girl. And we also have a slight scholarship for 11th, 12th. It's looking at girls who perform. Most of our scholarships are based on the need. It's not based on performance at all. So most of our scholarships we see, is it required financially for the family? But for 11th and 12th, we've started one that's specifically for girls based on performance, because we want to ensure, that they stay in school and that they also pursue, diverse fields. They shouldn't be limited in what they look at.
Absolutely. And I think like you said, the bigger challenge is for them to continue that journey, to continue getting that education. And some of them, even though they would want to get that education, they need those means, to move forward. And convincing, I think at that time, counseling from your side with the parents would also play a big role, because they would want them either to get married or to settle down and not spend more on education. So I think that's where the counseling part would really help them continue on that
path.
Path.
We've started quite a bit more in the past year or two. We've started a lot more support, beyond 12th. So our school goes up to 12th, but after 12th, what will they do? How do they find? There's actually so many scholarships available for college, but finding them is very tough. Yeah. For a rural child to know where to go to get some sponsorship for this type of education it's like overwhelming. Yeah. Even filling out an application. So this year we have been helping some students apply for NDA. Okay. But filling out that application is very daunting. So these type of things are where support is needed. It's not just for the preparation academically, but for finding scholarships, for seeing how to fill out the application, for finding these opportunities. This is where we found a lot of support is needed. So that's where we're seeing how to give that extra support.
Correct. No, that's absolutely wonderful. Like, you hand holding them for a little longer than, just the 12th grade till when they are with you. I think that really must be reinforcing in them that strength to move on. So, Ma, like you've been sharing a few more success stories with us. We've talked about challenges, but some other success story that comes to your mind of a child or a teacher, anybody, we would love to hear, because it's such an, inspiring journey when you talk about those success stories.
Okay. So when you said teacher, I'll share. Right when I first came, I think the first or second year I was here, I was doing interviews in one of our schools. So we were interviewing teachers. One thing is, for me, it was tough because I was new to India. And all the nuances are different. The way that people in the US, all the mannerisms are very different. Though the person is speaking English, picking up the mannerisms was tough. So when I was doing interviews, it was like very hard for me to distinguish, how the quality of the person. But I remember one teacher we interviewed, when she was taking the class, she took it like this. The whole class, she had her book like this, just covering her face. She was so nervous, like hardly audible. I was thinking, oh my gosh, how will she manage in the classroom? Because she clearly had no experience. She was very shy, all these things, but we had nobody, like we didn't have anybody else. So I said, okay, let's hire this person, but I don't know how she'll be. Now she's like one of our top, she's a vice principal in the school, and she's so capable. She does training, for many other schools, not just at her own school. She supports with training for all the schools. She's like so knowledgeable in her subject area, and I mean, she's learned from everything. She's taken every opportunity and learned from it. She's learned from the students. She's learned from our training. She's learned so much from her principal, who she's worked with, and she's become such a success. I'm like really, when I see her, I'm in awe of how she went from here to here, because it's such a jump.
Yeah.
And she's such an asset to Isha Vidhya.
Wow.
So like this, actually almost all of our vice principals, I think all of our vice principals are like this. They all started as teachers, and through time, we've seen how much they stepped up. Absolutely. And how they started taking so much initiative, and how they, how much they learned. And that is like the most important part of the school is the principal and vice principal. Yeah. Whatever we do, we have an academic team. Whatever we do is only to support them. If they have to like guide everything. So having such gems in place in the school is like really what makes the schools a success. And seeing our own teachers come from whatever, wherever they came, and coming up to this level is like such a wonderful thing to see. And of course, the same thing with students. When you see some students coming, how they are when they first come, and they're so young, and then seeing them as they get older and older, then, after they graduate, many of them come back. Now we've had a few classes who've graduated. They've come back as alumni. They want to support the school. They want to see, how can I also help the school? They're not ready to donate money yet, but they want to donate their time. They want to see how they can help. Even within the school, we've started something called peer learning, where we have older kids teach younger kids. So we have them teach in a small group of like 4 or 5. How the kids teach, it's so precious. You have to come and see. Oh. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, okay, it's nice to see a good teacher, but when you see a good child teaching, it is so incredible. And however their teacher does, I remember I was visiting one school and I saw this girl teaching. I was amazed. I asked the teacher, where did she get all these ideas? The teacher said, oh, I do that in my class. Oh. I was like, okay. So they just soak up everything, and they just, with their full heart, they're giving. And there's some students who they wouldn't talk in their regular class. We had one boy, he was very shy. He wouldn't speak English in class. If the teacher calls, he wouldn't talk. But now we've put him in a class where he has to teach. Suddenly he's coming out speaking English, telling stories in English, helping the little kids in his group. So even the principal and vice principal were like really amazed. We never expected, for the child to do something like this. So the main successes I see is when we create an opportunity. See, if we limit, okay, we want the children to go like this, then they'll only go like that. But as soon as we open it up and we say, okay, let's see where they go. Yeah. That's when we get amazed. Absolutely. Those are the successes, is when we don't put boundaries, when we let them come out with something which we don't expect, then it's so incredible. Things beyond what we would expect happen.
Absolutely. And Ma, this resonates with a podcast that I had with Mr. Fridolin Baizat. He's the head of design department at Art Center College of Design. And I was just asking him, so, how can we increase our creativity? So these are the basic 2 things that he mentioned. He said the big 2 steps are to dig deep and to seek inspiration. And I think that goes for anything, any person. It's a life skill that we need to develop. And like you said, if you have an environment where one can just, explore so many things, one has the peace and nurturing environment, you can just go in and you can figure out what I like and then follow your heart. And I think that happiness and success will definitely follow after that. But it's just that you need to give that peace to yourself to figure out first. And that, I think, as teachers, we can enhance their skill, we can enhance their knowledge, we can give them the support. But I think, like you said, we need to expand their vision. They need to just imagine so many things and then figure out.
I have a nice story which came to mind when you said
Please,
this.
please
So
share.
yeah, so in one of our schools, I was talking to one of the kindergarten teachers. This was a few years. Now she's teaching higher class. Generally, we don't, in a lot of schools, the kindergarten teacher, they'll go to first, second, third. They think it's a promotion. We say, no, no, no. Please keep the good teachers. Don't put them up. It's not a promotion because this is the foundation. It's so important, For a long time, we wouldn't. The principal would say, I need this teacher. No, you have to keep them in kindergarten. She's too good. Like this, we wouldn't let them shift. But this was one of our kindergarten teachers who's, wonderful teacher. And she was sharing. She gave a drawing assignment to the students. So in most, generally in schools here in India, what I've seen is there'll be a drawing book, which is like on one page, there'll be a picture and on the other page, the child replicates it. Maybe the outline is there and they color it in, or maybe it's blank, but they have to replicate that picture only. And so early on, we said, we're not doing this. See, sometimes you can copy because you can learn some skills. That's definitely true, especially in art. But we want them to express themselves through art. Absolutely. So instead, we give some medium. Maybe they're learning paper mache, or maybe they're learning painting, or they're learning something with clay. But they should learn how to use a medium, but then the expression should be their own. Yeah. So in this class, it's kindergarten, so it's a basic drawing, but it's a blank sheet of paper. There's nothing, just a blank paper, and the teacher said, draw your mother. So all the children started drawing, but one child started to cry. So immediately we think, okay, something happened in her family. Of course, the teacher thinks that, and she goes and asks the child, what's wrong? Don't cry, it's okay. The child says, my mother is very big. I cannot fit her on this paper. So then the teacher was like, okay. So she brought a much larger paper and gave it to the child. The child was very happy. Okay, so the child very happily on this larger paper draws her mother. Then the teacher takes the drawing. The child has filled the whole page with her mother. On the back of the page, she's drawn the braid. Oh. The mother's braid, she drew on the back. And the teacher said when she met the mother, indeed, the mother was quite large. Oh. But this is something never would any adult think of this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This is the beauty of the child, is that they're all geniuses.
Yeah.
And how they think. They all think outside of the box.
Absolutely.
So our job is to not impose that box. Let them continue to think like this.
Absolutely.
So this is one of my favorite stories because it's kindergarten and it's just so,
So beautiful, Ma. I think that's what, in fact, when a long time back, when I was conducting one of the sessions, so one of the teachers came and said, I'm a kindergarten teacher, but do you think I need to, the same thing, like you said, that should I upgrade myself and move to, middle school or say, I said, you're talking about two different things. There is no upgrading from kindergarten to that. A kindergarten teacher is a great kindergarten teacher, right? And I sometimes feel that all the teachers should go through a kindergarten training because that's where they start in that wonderful rainbow world, right? And they would really understand that why that fun needs to continue up. Because as soon as the children move on to the primary and the middle years, it becomes just dark, gray, black and white, and it's all about, there's no fun there. So once the teachers go through that kindergarten training and teach in that area, they will feel the necessity to continue with that fun wherever they are. It doesn't need to stop. And that expression, I think that only a child can bring out. And I definitely, that's what like when we conducted the sessions also, there was one technique where I made them create, and I'm telling them a story and they had to draw. And some of the teachers were like, we held a crayon after so long. We've not held a crayon in years. And they were so happy that they didn't want to stop. So when I said, okay, now it's time up, let put your crayons down, there's no, I just want to finish this and I want to finish that. So that the childlike excitement, I think, needs to continue. And we sometimes forget as grown-ups that there is a child in us. And as teachers, we need to keep that child alive to reach our children, where whatever the age they may be. So wonderful, Ma. That's beautiful stories and such amazing learnings from you. And before we go, I would like you to give a message to all our listeners and viewers. Please do tell us something.
That's a tough challenge. I guess the first thing that comes to my mind is that we're blessed to work in education. I think, of all the fields to work in, getting to work with children is like a huge opportunity. It should be considered like the highest job, because we're shaping the future generations, one. But secondly, it's a chance for us to learn so much. Like we were just saying, the creativity of children, the way that they think, it's much broader than how we think. So I guess what I would say is that though there will always be challenges, for whatever we do, we should always remember what an opportunity, what a blessing for us it is, one, to impact their lives, and two, for us to continue learning and growing through, working with the children, because they are incredible teachers. Each one of them is.
Thank you, Ma, for those wonderful words. And you're so right. And I totally, wholeheartedly believe in what you say, because we as teachers, I think we have such a big responsibility of that life that comes to us. And we need to create our classrooms, our schools, such happy places, so that the children who step out of those schools are happy souls and they spread happiness wherever they go. So thank you so much for these wonderful thoughts. And I've learned so much and I want to continue learning. So we will definitely be in touch for more of these sessions. And thank you for being on my podcast.
Thank you. It's been an honor and very enjoyable to talk to you. And I look forward to our future.
Definitely. Thank you, Ma. Thank you so much.